Welcome to Break It Off, a brand new English talk show by HKeye, where we'll be shattering stereotypes from all professions. I'm your host, Melody Chan, and today I'm joined with Steph Ng, who is a mental health advocate on body image and the author of Big Bites Break Boundaries. Before we dive straight into your book, I just want to know, what's your favorite food?
That is a great question. Thank you so much for having me on Break It Off, Melody. And I think maybe you can tell what my favorite food is based on the cover of my new book. It's dumplings, and it's one of my favorite foods because it brings me a lot of comfort. It brings back lots of memories of sitting around a dinner table and enjoying my time with family members and loved ones.
I do remember making dumplings with my family as well during Chinese New Year, and it's such a bonding moment. I know you mentioned kind of those moments in the book as well, where you were making food for your mom and your aunt. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so the book is about my experiences with an eating disorder in my teens. It's a collection of stories, really. A lot of different stories throughout my recovery journey that have helped me see things in a different way. And some of those stories are about the moments where those highlights of those moments in recovery where I realized that I didn't need to be so scared of breaking out of the routines of food and exercise that I kind of really tightly held onto during the eating disorder. My aunt cooking for me during my recovery journey, and she created lots of different dishes that looked like different cartoon characters. So I remember there was one that was like an omelet shaped like a pig, and it brought back a sense of fun and curiosity to my eating experience. And so I'll always remember that. I think a broader theme that I touch upon in the book is that eating is so much more than just the act of, putting food into your body. It's very symbolic. It's often tied to our cultural values, and it really shapes, the practices that we have at dinner tables and the mealtime conversations really have such a strong role in shaping who we are.
And talking about holding on to something, I guess during your journey, you might have held on to a lot of things. And for me, personally, I always hold on to calories, which is why I feel that certain kind of guilt every time maybe I have a piece of cookie or something like that. How do you navigate through that?
Because I think a lot of people have normalized this kind of guilt and shame surrounding eating more than they think they should, or just breaking out of a prescribed diet routine. And so we think that when we can control our eating and exercising behaviors and then get a certain body shape, we're automatically going to solve all of our internal problems. So that's perhaps some of the narrative that many of us have come to believe, and to no fault of anyone. It's very easy to believe, and it feels good to believe that kind of storyline because emotions are messy. I think why it's so easy to cling on to food as the source of our unhappiness is because it's much easier than facing the fact that there's a lot more going on inside. In our rushed culture, trying to get somewhere faster, especially in Hong Kong society, it's not easy to do that. The food is a scapegoat for larger emotional issues that perhaps you don't have the time or the capacity to process and deal with yet.
Talking about food guilt and all that, and a lot of that stems from society. And where do you think these, stereotypes actually come from? Like, how do they evolve?
Larger bodies were seen as more ideal or seen as more attractive because having more food and being able to afford food was seen as a kind of social status. So that's kind of a brief overview of perhaps why larger bodies were seen as more attractive in the past. But now the currency or the way that we show status is time. If we can show that we have time to go to the gym, time to cook for ourselves, that we can afford food that's nutritious, then that's linked to a smaller body.
And we're still being weighed down to be, skinny and petite and all that in Asian culture as well. Like, are you angry about that?
It makes me feel quite annoyed and frustrated. I know that when I look at, particularly with beauty pageants in Hong Kong, not going to name names about which places these beauty pageants show up, but I'm just going to say beauty pageants where women and men are objectified, and it's humiliating, and it really sends a message to viewers that should they also have this kind of body shape, that they would be subjected to this kind of criticism as well. And what kind of messaging is that sending to our young people? if they're walking through the streets, they might internalize these kinds of criticisms in their head. In many cases, I've noticed that when people comment on body size, it's a way to create a connection, to say hi. Having lots of different perspectives being fed to us and hearing from different people's lived experiences, I think that really, really helps. The act of breaking boundaries, breaking stereotypes, because it helps expose us to ideas and human perspectives that we might not have considered.
Can you maybe read a snippet of your book that you felt like that just embodies you or is your favorite part of writing it?
Yeah, thank you. And I'd love to pass part of it to you to read as well. I learned how to show gratitude for what I'm provided. For example, trying not to waste food as much as possible. And I also learned general life lessons in the form of folk tales and fables. For example, do you know what happens if you don't finish all the rice in your bowl? You're going to marry a dude with a pimply face.
I remember questioning whether there was too much in me when a family friend told me to stop swimming because my shoulders were becoming too broad. I remember feeling heat rise in my cheeks when a doctor said to me, "You have too much muscle. If you gain any more, you won't be able to find a husband."
A huge message that I hope people can take away from this book, even more broadly, not just with eating disorders, but with mental illness more generally. It's important to look beyond what you can see on the surface. And it's important to remember that mental distress does not need to be visible in order to be valid. Check in with your loved ones frequently and thoughtfully. Yeah.
That was so lovely. And thank you so much for unwrapping everything, your book and your life, And thank you for being with us, Steph.
Thank you to break it off. It's like, break it off. I have to put it a Taylor Swift reference. But thank you for this conversation, Melody. It really means a lot.